DJ Event Planner will change the way you manage and run your business. Streamline all of your procedures and software into one easy-to-manage system. DJ Event Planner, the ultimate online planning tool.
For those of you joining us, thank you for being with us tonight. We've got one more topic we're going to be doing. We did a couple of topics already in the description down below here on YouTube video. You can go down and click on that and go check it out. If you're watching us on Facebook, you've been watching and you saw. If you are on our webinar, thank you for being with us. We're following the webinar chat. If you can ask some questions and such, because once we wrap up with this last segment, we're talking speakers, outdoor parades, and that whole arena, doing some outdoor sound, and then we'll be doing some Q&A afterwards for the people who are in the inside. So our last question, Ben, in that series is, when I'm outside playing, whether it's in a parade or even doing a car show or anything, protecting gear from sun is a concern. Let's kind of go through and talk about what gear we have to be more cautious with than others, and what we have to deal with out there to make sure that we're not damaging our gear.
Well, shooting from the hip on this one, but kind of three things jumped into my head right away. Number one, and maybe the most obvious one, because we're probably talking short-term exposure here. We're not out there for a long time. Although probably everybody's familiar with the long-term degradation sunlight provides to things. I mean, that radiation just, you see it bleach plastics and, breaks things down. That's why when we do outdoor installs, we have to use special cable that's sunlight resistant because the sunlight does degrade those things. But this is short-term we're talking about. So probably number one is heat. That radiated energy from the sun. I mean, anybody who stood outside in a dark t-shirt knows that the sunlight creates additional heat. Electronics doesn't like heat. It's a byproduct of amplifier circuits and that sort of thing. And so that can cause our amplifiers and our powered speakers to heat up and potentially a point of failure. Also could cause, separation of adhesives on the speaker cone and some of those things in extreme examples. So heat would be probably number one. Also not good for, decks or players or laptops or, none of that stuff likes heat. Number two, I've seen sunlight do damage to things like liquid crystal displays and that sort of thing. Again, we're talking short-term exposure, probably not a big deal, but I would certainly try to keep as much of my gear out of direct blaring sunlight as I can.
So which one is more damaging to our gear? Like if we're Mike Schnauder down in Louisiana area, he does parades and such, and down there it can be hot, humid, and of course if the sun's out. Which one, of those three, which was the most damaging, or is it just that?
I think it's a cumulative effect. It's kind of like getting into a brawl and getting jumped by three people, I mean, your gear obviously is designed with some parameters to, the engineers thought about some of that, but when you got to deal with all three, obviously you start with just an inherently high ambient air temperature, and then you add the sunlight heat on top of that. And then you factor in some humidity, which, electronics just loves humidity, that was sarcasm, by the way.
Yes.
It's a kind of a pile-on effect. So certainly sunlight is a bigger issue in Dallas or Phoenix or Louisiana than it is in Minnesota, because we're starting with the lower ambient air temperature to begin with. But again, it's that pile-on effect of the additional heat of the sun. And of course, most of our stuff is black. Yeah. Most DJ gear, sound gear is black. So try to keep that stuff, particularly the amplifiers and powered speakers, keep those shaded a little bit if you can. Find a clever decorative way to put a, white draping over to scrim or something. Just build it into part of the float somehow if you can, but in reality, again, in Minnesota, it's not as much of a concern. It really isn't, but there's also a long-term effect on the gear. Every time you expose it to high heat and that sort of thing, you just take a little bit of its life away. So
when a person is out chrome speakers, why is Reggie talking chrome speakers?
I don't know.
It caught me. I shouldn't have looked at that because I just lost my question. We're talking heat. We're talking that. Yeah, I was going. It was something really inspiring, Reggie. Yeah, yes, Reggie. You made me forget.
Yeah. Now who's the attention deficit guy?
I know. I was doing so well too, and it was a really good question.
I'm the poster child, John. I really am.
It was a really good question because, we were talking the heat. Oh yeah, here we go. So some of the speakers, as I've been looking at different speakers at NAMM and such, some you have those that have a fan in the back, and some of the professional speakers, and I'm talking professional ones that are not the ones we saw down in the basement at NAMM. The ones that are designed by some reputable companies. Some of them do not have fans in them. Would one be something, if I'm going to be doing an outdoor event, to look at using one over the other because of just the presence or lack thereof of fan?
I would probably take a fan. The ones that don't, and it's amazing with amplifier technology being what it is now. Some of these Class D amplifiers convert very little of the electrical energy into heat energy. They're very efficient as opposed to like Class A, B, and that sort of thing. And so these things obviously work reliably in a gig situation. Others have they've created processes where the movement of the cone and the air that's moving creates some airflow. Besides just the well, gosh, I lost the word. Anyway.
Where the induction and cooling that goes on because of the cooling.
Exactly. But anyway, like a lot of the modern loudspeakers have fans in them. ETX from EV has, EKX has fans in it. So, those would be good choices.
Yeah,
I guess given the choice, I would take one with a fan over one without, probably.
Just checking the chat room there if there's any questions or anything on how to deal with heat. Okay. Well, we're going to wrap this segment up, and we're going to stick around here for the webinar. For those of you who are watching the webinar, we'll do some question and answer and such in that arena. I'd like to thank those of you who are watching out on Facebook Live and such. These videos will be broken apart and put up on YouTube in a few days, so you guys can check them out there. And we will catch you next time. Thanks for watching.